Can you find it, Jerry? Okay, look down at the bottom of your screen on the corner of the left side.
Here, I'll run in and help. All right, can you hear us now?
Yes, we
Yeah, I
can.
can hear you.
Yay! Got it.
All right.
All right.
Are we ready to proceed or?
Yep, we're ready to go.
Okay. All right, so everybody can hear me now.
Yeah.
Great.
Yes, that's true.
Let me see. I was waiting for Leslie to get back. Is there any comments, public comment that has come in?
No, sir, we haven't received any public comments via email.
All right, so call to order.
All right, Vice Chair Kaspersky, or Second Vice Chair Kaspersky?
Here.
First Vice Chair Lintel?
Here.
Chair Blackwelder?
Here.
For the record, we have a quorum.
All right. Let me see, call to order. So then, number 3, review of agenda. Has there been anything that wants to be added, Scott, or are we fine?
I would request that we amend the agenda such that the public hearing item for the capacity fee be placed under the public hearing section of the agenda. It was inadvertently placed on the consent, and so it should be heard as a public hearing.
Yeah, that was
Other
one
than
of my
that,
questions.
nothing
Is
else.
that E?
Item E, yes,
Right.
5E. Be
All
placed
right,
on
so
public.
that'll be,
yeah.
what'll that be now, 6B or something?
I believe so, yes.
All right. There's no public comment. 5, consent agenda.
I'd like to pull D.
Which one?
D as in Danny.
Okay. What's the other one we pulled? I think E was the other one. So. Yeah, so we're going to pull D and E. And is there a motion to approve A through C?
I move to approve consent agenda items A, B, and C.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes. So we're going to go to D now. And Pat?
Yeah, I just would like some explanation on it. Some of the things on the very first page of the proposed fiscal year 2019-20 budget amendments under expenses, under PARS, pension, medical insurance, and dental insurance. Those numbers for the adjustment.
think Kimberly Drabner probably should address those.
I can. And a lot of that has to do with the balance of where work is performed and just the projects that are going forward. And we always have a plan in place, you know, when we do the budget for which projects will be performed. And then that plan seems to get changed by the changing demands. And so what ends up happening is more personnel time is spent in administration than on a particular project, and it skews where we budgeted for those expenditures. So that is just adjusting the expenditure balance to where personnel time was actually spent throughout the course of the year.
Okay, thank you. And does that apply, excuse me, does that apply to the legal services also?
No, legal services are done more as a consultant line. So legal services is simply increased because there was more of a demand based on the projects that were going forward than was previously anticipated.
Okay, and then when we go into the next page, under revenue total, the sewer system management plan update and the LAFCO.
Mm-hmm.
And those numbers I don't. So it looks like.
Yeah, that was one where the sewer system management plan, it was the timing of when the work was being performed. It wasn't completed as quickly as we anticipated, and so there were some carryover costs in addition to what we anticipated. And LAFCO was ended last year and ended up in the budget kind of as a carryover because of the timing of when the budget was done. So it should have, it was completed in the prior year and wasn't necessary in this budget.
Okay, and then on the following page, the lift station upgrades. There was, is that, do we postpone things?
No, I think that was more of a matter, and maybe Scott can speak to this, but my understanding is it relates more to what we originally thought we were going to do when the budget for the current year was put in place, and then which projects went forward. And a lot of it has to do with, you know, the accounting by project, and many of those projects are, you know, when you're doing the lift stations, it's the various lift stations, and some of them advanced more quickly, some ended up being more expensive. So those are just adjustments based on the work that was actually done on projects.
But
Okay,
the project continues. It is continuing, and will continue for the next couple months, several months.
Okay, thank you, Kimberly and Scott.
So is there a motion to approve B?
If I could add some questions.
Sure.
I also saw that there was some part-time hourly wages. Were we hiring somebody part-time to do some work this year, and do we intend to continue that?
We haven't hired SCSD. We may, from time to time, use employees as needed, depending on staffing needs from the city of Seaside.
Oh, I see.
So, yeah, I mean, Seaside does provide the labor for SCSD, and so there could be some shuffling of labor as needed, depending on whatever maintenance is needed at the time.
I see, that makes sense. And then I noticed that the workers' comp is going up, and you know, this includes the future budget, which we're not talking about yet, but there's some workers' comp charges that have increased not insignificantly this year and are projected to increase. Is there a reason for that?
We have our workers' comp for SCSD is done through the JPIA, as you know, same as the city's workers' comp, and it's just based on premium increases that we have seen. For further information about, you know, what's really behind those premium increases, we'd have to consult with the risk manager.
Okay, I think
But that is-
that's enough. So it's just about the premiums going up.
Yes, we are
Okay.
seeing increases in our premiums.
Okay, and so this is next question is a more substantive question, I think personally, and I talked to Scott about this yesterday, and I hope you found an answer, Scott, which is that your item about the capacity charges had me wondering, why are the capacity charges not shown on the SCSD budget? Is that a different budget?
And on that, the capacity charges tend to be pretty inconsistent historically, so that is something we generally adjust the budget mid-year partway through if we're seeing a substantive amount of capacity charges.
Okay.
But it just hasn't been historically significant or consistent enough. So it tends to not be included when you are doing a baseline revenue for spending.
All right, I'm okay with that, although I assume we are looking at capacity charges because we now have at least 2 developments that are going to require us to increase the capacity in our pipelines. So it does seem like we should at least account for some amount of that income. Well, that brings a bigger question, which in my mind is, I saw that the 2019-2020 budget is relatively balanced, but then in the next year we're underspending. Are we are we doing enough work? Are we spending all the money that we are getting in?
Yes, and one thing to consider with the SCSD budget is the current budget has some very significant projects underway, and those projects have already been encumbered and are using the majority of the available reserve. And the way the accounting works at the end of the year, because we have entered into those contracts and committed those funds, any remaining unspent funds will roll to the next year's budget, which isn't reflected in the current budget because it's part of this year's budget that will roll forward. And there are also a lot of contingencies and unknowns around that. And I'll let Scott speak to the amount of work, but from a budgetary standpoint, there is a significant amount of budget tied up in those current projects. And so when that rolls forward, you'll see, that substantive amount there, as well as wanting to kind of keep some of that reserve building back up, because we are depleting a great deal of the reserve with these current projects. You do want to see some of that underspending to rebuild that reserve in the event of an emergency.
And what is a good amount of reserves for us to have? Because I know we drew down like most of it, except for maybe 2 million.
Yeah, generally what you're going to want to see is about 25% of your operating budget.
Okay.
So we're going to want to try to build up.
Okay, so we will have to be more conservative in future years.
Yes.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
Is there a motion?
I move to approve item D.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moving on to, what is it? E, we're going to move that and change it to 6B. Is that correct, Michael?
Correct.
All right, thank you. So moving on, we're going to go to new business. That's 6A. I had a, let me see. I had a question about just how we're supposed to have public comment, approve a budget, and then everything starts on June 1st. It doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of time. Maybe I'm misunderstanding it, Scott.
Well, July 1st for the budget being implemented, it's fairly typical for us to bring it in the June meeting for adoption. So I can, Kimberly could also comment on budget adoption, but that's fairly standard. Correct, Kimberly?
And it does not have to be done all in one meeting. Historically, it's been done in one meeting simply because the sanitation district tends to only meet once a month. However, if there are questionable items and you feel that there needs to be more discussion and an opportunity to take in public comments, evaluate those comments, make your recommendations for potential changes to the budget and get back at a special meeting, we can do that as well.
And have we had any public comment?
No, we have not. We haven't received any.
Okay. So, and we've done due diligence as far as, all right. So Scott?
Actually, I'm going to hand this over to Kimberly real quick, but I will answer questions as needed under 6A as well.
All right. Kimberly.
And we don't have a formal presentation with the budget. As Scott mentioned, this budget reflects ongoing activity according to the CIP that they have going forward, in addition to, as I mentioned, a continuance of the projects that are currently going on. So the budget is only pushing forward the revenues, the operating revenues that are expected next year. All of those projects that are currently underway will roll to the, to FY21 and continue. It also does allow for those reserves to begin being built back up.
And I know at our council meetings and budget meetings, we have kind of updates like every quarter or something like that, because things do change a lot. Is that something that happens throughout the year with the budget?
Generally with the sanitation district, the expenditure reports will kind of keep things going and then changes to the projects. But I think what we've seen over the past year is that, the projects that they want, that they seem to need, it's, this time of year when the budget's being done tends to change over time. So I would feel that quarterly updates on the budget would be beneficial, and it would prevent these large changes at the end of the year when those projects have impacted where salaries have been budgeted and where significant amounts of money have been budgeted for the various projects. So yes, I think that quarterly needs to be incorporated into the meetings.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the rest of you guys? Lisa? Pat?
I asked most of my questions in the previous budget, actually. Thank you.
Well, that's not right. Okay, so the resolution. So is there a motion to approve the Seaside County Sanitation District adopting the annual operating budget for the fiscal year of 2020 and 2021?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Resolution passes. So now we're going to 6B, which used to be 5E, I think. And Yeah, when I was going through this, I was wondering how we're gonna do a roll call vote in the middle of a consent calendar. But Scott cleared that up. So Scott?
Well, thank you for taking the time and doing that. Again, my apologies for putting that on consent. But yes, we have before you today a amendment to the SCSD code regarding permits and inspections related to capacity fees. Our last capacity fee study was done in 2013. And it was time for an update. The district retained a consulting firm, Bartle Wells and Associates, to perform the study. They took into account the current master plan, CIP, looked at the budgets, and arrived at a new capacity fee. Again, this fee is a fee that is only charged at the time of new connections to the existing system, and it's meant to offset the costs of buying into the existing systems and planning for the future upgrades and increase in capacities that will eventually be needed as a system matures and grows. I would note that the approach that was chosen was a hybrid buy-in plus marginal future cost methodology, and I am not a finance person per se. I think the report itself tries to describe and does a decent job of describing what that methodology means, but basically the cost is derived by looking at the current cost of the existing infrastructure plus the new costs anticipated for future infrastructure, and then figuring out how to, and then dividing those costs by the future growth and assessing the costs back to the new user or the new connections. It is divided into an equivalent dwelling unit, and then depending on the type of use, they're assigned dwelling units. So if you had a commercial application, it would be given certain amounts of equivalent dwelling units. So the fee proposed is $5,320 per EDU. It is an expensive increase, but it does reflect actual costs and buy-in. I think I'll leave it at that and let you ask me questions.
Any questions?
I do. I think the report said we are anticipating about 1,000 equivalent dwelling units to be built. Is that this year? What's our timeline on that?
No, that was actually through 2030.
Okay.
That's based on existing plans, general plans that are available. I believe the report does also recommend updating these as those general plans are updated. So that may be something we will consider relatively shortly. The city of Seaside does have a general plan update that is anticipated, I believe, relatively soon. And so we can, and then double check with Sand City and Del Rio Oaks as well on any newly or soon to be adopted general plans that then could be incorporated into a reevaluation of these capacity fees if necessary. So.
And Scott, I had heard rumblings of Del Rio Oaks wanting to develop an area there, but it was going to be a campsite or something. I'm not sure. Do you know of a project that would increase our sewer collection needs out there?
The RV park is all I am currently aware of of any significance.
So that wouldn't include any potential development by Del Rio Oaks on the Fort Ord properties?
It would. Yes, they would pay these fees, and that would help offset any costs that might be needed, whether it be upsizing a lift station in Delray Oaks if necessary. And again, we might have to relook, as the case may be, when actual plans are adopted or updated.
Thank you.
Now, do these capacity fees get targeted to any specific fund, or do they just get thrown in the general sewer district fund?
They would be, well, I actually might throw that to Kimberly, but I believe we would keep them in the reserve. But maybe Kimberly can answer that better.
All of the revenue goes into 951, basically with SCSD, all revenue comes into 951 and then is distributed out based on the plan for each of those other funds. So for now, those would all come into the administrative fund and would only be expended out if it was part of the capital outlay or capital projects. Otherwise, it would fall into the administrative reserve to be held for future projects.
Okay. And I just wanted to put it on the record that I asked. These fees are significantly higher than we were charging previously, and they're significantly higher than other cities, other sewer districts are charging. What impact do you think that'll have on development in our district?
Someone's got feedback. I did speak with at least the community development or economic development director here at the city of Seaside, and he felt the fees were reasonable and would not negatively impact the desire to develop within the city of Seaside. So I feel that the approach, the proposed approach that's recommended reflects a better buy-in to the existing infrastructure. From my perspective, we've seen a lot of efficiencies in water use, which in a way allows for increased capacity that wasn't necessarily planned. But when these new connections come under the old methodology, they don't have as much of a buy-in to the existing infrastructure. So the proposed hybrid methodology, while expensive to the new connection as opposed to the an alternative approach, it more accurately reflects what I think actually happens in the real world, which is you have capacity to add users, certainly not infinite capacity, but you do have some capacity, and they weren't paying their fair share of that existing capacity. So I can't say for certain that the other cities and agencies will eventually catch up, but it is a game of, I do think it's more of, we might be a little ahead of the curve, but not very far ahead of the curve. So again, I don't have any inside knowledge, but I would expect other agencies to soon have increases as well.
It's my understanding also that on future development, frequently the developer absorbs some of the cost of the development of the property, such as that. So it would depend on the agreement of the city with the developer.
And that is yes, that's certainly potential. Case in point, in Sand City, the developer will build sewer main infrastructure within the development, but there's still capacity to be conveyed outside of the development. And so that is a fact of development. So that's just how that works. And we have that case with the West End in Sand City, an infrastructure agreement in place.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there a motion to approve an ordinance amending Seaside County Sanitation District Code Chapter 4.15, permits and inspections to amend the sewer connection capacity fees?
I
Is there
so
a motion?
move.
Is there a second?
Second.
I also approve it. Leslie, could we have a roll call?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
we need to officially open the public hearing for comment, and then close the public hearing and then proceed forward with the roll call vote.
Okay, open public comment. I see
Through the
nobody
chair,
comment.
We have not received any emails through the course of the meeting or prior to it.
Okay, we close public comment. Leslie, could you do the roll call?
Second Vice Chair Kaspersky,
Aye.
First Vice Chair Lintel,
Aye.
Chair Blackwelder.
Aye.
Motion
The motion
passes
passes.
unanimously.
All right, is there any additional stuff, Scott, or are we done?
Well, it just, I'll take this quick moment to say construction continues. We have good progress on Canyon Del Rey. I hope to see substantial completion in the month of June. Del Monte proceeds with typical types of construction issues, but nothing significant. And the lift station work is starting up again. PG&E has made progress, so we hope to start Rosita in the next few weeks, maybe the end of June timeframe, and keep on moving forward. So a little bit slow, definitely slow on the lift station, but not completely done. So we're moving forward, and that's just a quick update on construction projects. And the design for the Fremont expansion continues. Fremont Broadway expansion continues, and will continue through the better part of this year.
I
Yeah, it
have a
looks good, all the activity.
I have a question for Scott. You say that the lift station on Rosita will be resuming probably by the end of June. When do you anticipate the completion of that?
That's a tough one. I would say probably by the end of July. There's not a lot of, it's a fairly straightforward kind of upgrade of pumps and existing infrastructure. So it's not as long as, say, the military lift station where we had a significant amount of grading and new wet wells to install. But I would like to just caveat that with we haven't had a chance to have our re-kick off construction with the contractor. So let's get PG&E to actually approve the electrical so that they can actually start construction, and I should have a better update. I'll try by July meeting. We'll see if I have enough. It's kind of right at that time frame where PG&E could say, oh, we need another week, and they could take us past our board meeting. But soon, I hope, another month.
Okay, I have many
Well-
residents asking me when it's going to be completed there. It's not a very pretty site as
Yes,
it
I do
exists right
apologize.
now.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So if that's all, we stand adjourned at 10:04.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.